Hi, everybody. Diana here at Sew Uncommon. Welcome to this episode of Sew Uncommon. Now, I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've done a video, and if you follow over on Facebook, I've let you know. 1 week, I was so sick, I had laryngitis, I couldn't speak. It wasn't COVID. I have had really bad time with allergies this season. Our weather hasn't gone below like 90 degrees in weeks and weeks. We finally got a couple of days where it broke last week, but now it's already back up to 90 degrees again. And so that is causing molds and all kinds of stuff to just, and I have a horrible, I normally have a bad time at the end of summer and the beginning of fall with allergies, but this year it's been, you can even tell my voice still is not 100%. And I'm still not 100% better in that case. But so if you've been watching Facebook, you know that happened. And then I put out a post last week that from now until the end of October, I'm not going to be doing library quilting videos. I'm not going to be doing good gadget videos. I'm going to be doing Sew Uncommon once a week, and it will come out on just any day that I happen to be able to do it. Life events have just gotten a little bit like nuclear explosion, mushroom cloud kind of crazy. So let me say this, everybody is well and nothing has happened with Dave and I know people always, those are like the questions folks always ask. No, we're fine. It's work stuff, basically, other than what we love to do for work. It's the stuff that pays the bills. You guys get that. And it's just kind of gotten just out of control. And so I am committed to a couple of things until the end of October. And then hopefully everything will go back to normal. So I'm trying to still do the collage forms group and the mystery quilt along as normal, but I'm only being able to do one video a week. And my socialites blocks, you can tell I'm so kind of from all of this drainage and stuff, but I've not been able to sew a single quilt block in 2 weeks. I hate that, but that's how it goes. But I still wanted to bring you something this week, and I got to thinking, and I got back to looking at some older emails and things and questions that you all had sent to me. And so I've already done a video. Let me grab these trays. I've already done a video that just kind of showed you how I cut up my fabrics, and I was just showing you that I cut them and I put them in tray. Whoops, that slid all over the place. These 3 trays are a bit of a mess right now. And then I put them in trays and I stack them, and I have a cube right under here. I slide them right in there, and then they're there whenever I need them for stuff. So whenever I'm doing something really scrappy, I just pull my trays out. I don't even look for matchy stuff. If it's scrappy, it's completely scrappy. But I got some more questions after that about, well, how do you know? And I kind of told you a little bit about how I cut things down, but people wanted like more specifics on how do I decide. So I've been trying to cut up, I had a bag, a travel bag that I used before COVID, that I always used to take with me whenever I would go to events where I was going to be doing anything scrappy, or I might need some fabric. I always had like a bag that I kept in that travel bag that was full of my pre-cut fabrics so that I could take them with me. And if I needed them, I could pull them out. Excuse me, it's an itch on my back. So I could pull them out. And I know a lot of you, when you travel, you do that too. But I'm still not back to going to in-person stuff yet. And so I was going through it the other day, just seeing what was in there. And lo and behold, I forgot I had this beautiful bag of scrap fabrics in there. I had some beautiful Moda Grunge in there. So look, I had like all of these in there. See all those, lots of neutrals in here. And I had a whole stack from a layer cake, which is a 10 by 10 pre-cut, right? We love those because you can do so much with them. And so I had this beautiful kind of botanicals and bee prints. These, see, now I can handle little bee prints. I told you before, I'm not wild about bees because they'll kill my husband if they sting him. So, but all of these, but I didn't have enough as a 10 by 10 pre-cut to really do anything with. And I've kind of gotten into doing some things lately with a 5 by 10 cut. So what I did was I took all of those and cut them in half that I had. And I ended up from just that one stack of 10 by 10 squares, that one collection, all of these 5 by 10 rectangles. And rectangles can be used for all kinds of quilts. So this is going to be a quilt. This is enough here now for a quilt done this way. So I set that aside. And then I saw all these others, and it looks like what I have is a lot of fat eighths, things like that. So I've been cutting them to make like a completely scrappy size 5 by 10 bricks, we can call them bricks, or rectangles, they're just rectangles. And that got me to start cutting other fabrics. Now, some of these are pretty big pieces. So like this one, this is pretty much almost a full fat quarter. I'm not going to cut that one up because that can still be used as a fat quarter. So I'm just folding it nicely and then putting it in my fat quarter pile. So that's kind of how, but now here is part of that color, same color, it's kind of the peachy Moda Grunge. That's ready to be cut up, okay? For me, that's ready to be cut. So I'm gonna set that one aside. So what I've been doing is I got my iron going. I'm using my grippy cutter. I call this a grippy cutter. I don't know what it's really called, but it's rotary cutter. It's the typical 45-degree blade. You can snap it. This one, oops, snap it, and it locks it, and snap it from the other side, and it does this. So I've been using that. I used to always keep a pinking sheared blade on here, but I thought I don't use it very often, so I thought if I did, I'll put it back on. But I wanted, my other handle broke, so I had to pull. I've got so many of these handles laying around that I just pulled another handle out, and this is the one I got. So I got that ready. Got a brand new blade in it because I'm prepared to do some major cutting. And I got my favorite Quilter Select, what's this? 1, 2, 3, yeah, 6-inch by 12-inch ruler. I got that. And then I have this other ruler by Stripology. It's called the Stripology Squared Mini. It's by Creative Grids. When I first got this and started using it, it wasn't what I thought I was going to use it for. And so I just kind of put it in my ruler and template drawer over in the big rolling cabinet and left it there. But part of my cut down has been that I've ended up cutting a bunch of these teeny tiny little 1.5-inch squares, teeny little baby squares. Now, I'll tell you what I do with these because I don't sew with them very often, but I'll tell you what I do with them here in a minute. And so cutting those from a strip was really easy to this because you just count over 3, cut it. You can see there's holes in here where you put your rotary cutter, and then you can cut, and that way you're not moving your ruler. So I got that out, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And I got this out, and I also got a can of my magic sizing out. Now, apparently this company and another company have merged. Niagara and Faultless have merged or something. So the can looks a little different. This is not starch, it is sizing, which is like a starch alternative. I like it 10 times more than starch. I've used this product in whatever the can looked like The can used to be a solid blue, this color blue. This is the regular finish. There's also one that was an extra crisp, which was my favorite. I can't seem to find it now, but I went ahead and got the original because I know the original always worked fine when I was using it. So I got it. I buy them like 6 at a time off of Amazon. I just go on there and order. Somebody sells them out there 6 at a time, and I order them. And they last me a long time because I don't go crazy with it. I know, so I don't soak my fabric. I think that's unnecessary. That's really a personal preference thing, right? If you're somebody who likes to soak your fabric and make it like practically like paper and then cut it and sew it, more power to you. That's your preference, and that's great. I don't do that. So 6 cans of this lasts me. I've not probably ordered this in 2 or 3 years. So that's how long it lasts me. But I got it out because this fabric, as it was coming out of this sack that I pulled out, is wrinkly. I mean, really, really wrinkly. I mean, just all kinds of crazy in there. So I'm using my Oliso travel iron. Little pink one. Now, I will say this. Oops, I just almost knocked my light into next week. Oliso, that it's a great iron, but in comparison to the little travel irons, it doesn't get as hot. And I don't like to put water in it because when I travel, I don't like water dripping out all over the place. And I use a mister bottle for when I steam and with that iron. And if I'm going to steam, I get out the big iron or the pressing steam press that I have. So because that doesn't get as hot as the little travel irons, I got out this to help get these wrinkles out because they're pretty ingrained in this fabric. Because I have bought 2 of those travel irons in a year now, and they both burned out, broken, something where they wouldn't heat up anymore. And at $25 a pop, I thought that was a little too much. So got new ones. Got my magnifiers out so I can clip them on and see my lines really good on my rulers. And so I thought today I would show you really specifically how I cut down my scraps and how I've changed something. So when I showed you my bins before, my trays, I would cut them to like the closest inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, that kind of thing. And then I got to realizing I was always trimming them down to a 1/2 inch because everything I do is 1/2 inch. So you get your 1/4 inch on each side of your seam allowance, right? So I have started now with this pile. I only cut to the 1/2 inch. So I've been cutting 5.5 inches. I've been cutting maybe 1.5 inches. And you can see I've got a huge stack of 3.5 inches. So this is going to be something I can do a lot with. And I've got a pretty good size stack going of 2.5 inches. So that'll come in handy. And then I've got a decent size stack of 4.5 inches going. Those aren't the only sizes. I wouldn't cut 6.5 inches. If I'm going to cut that, I'm going to cut it out of a fat quarter or something. I don't need to keep those sitting around for myself because that's not a size that I use on a regular basis as an individual block. If it's something that you use though, then cut it. But I would never do a bunch of pre-cuts bigger than 6.5, except for if you started to go crazy like I have with these 5 by 10 inch rectangles. So this is what I do. I'm going to show you, and we're going to talk about the sizes a little bit, like what I use them for and stuff like this. And I hope that's helpful and answers some more of your questions. I hate when I look back and go, oh gosh, I never answered that question. And because I needed to do a video for you this week, and honestly, I'm really short on time today even. Sorry guys, when I tell you life is crazy, I've been getting up at 5 and going to bed at midnight every night. So, and that will stop at the end of October because this old body can't do it much like that anymore. I am not 35 anymore. I'm not even 45 or 55 anymore. Anyway, so let's flip the camera over and I'm going to show you a little bit. We're just going to take this, this is a fat 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 inches by, yeah, it's probably not even a full fat 8. But we're going to take this piece of Moda Grunge and I'm going to kind of show you exactly how I cut it down so that I'm wasting the least amount of fabric in the end. Okay, so let me flip the camera over. Okay, so you can see I am like, I had nuts in here. Now my cap from my can is, it's a little bit of a mess. Oh, I should show you. Hang on, you're gonna see a smudgy camera. Now you're gonna get back to the regular. There we go. I ordered some Teflon sheets for pressing sheets. I got a little bit tired of always having my pressing cloths get kind of yucky when I would do spray stuff and all. So I ordered Teflon ones. Actually, let me grab, let's see, I think you get 3 or 4 of these. So they come in a pack, 3 or 4 like this. They're quite big. They're like big enough for a large baking sheet because that's what they're for, right? And then I cut one of them down because the area and all I have over here, this made a good size pressing sheet for me. And what I did is I just folded it in half after I cut it. And the other smaller pieces over there, I can use that for travel or something if I want. I just cut with not my good scissors, my junk scissors, and I cut off my edges to make them round like that. And that way when I'm doing applique and when I'm fusing patches and all kinds of stuff, anything you need a pressing sheet for, I just roll it up into a tube and I take one Wonder Clip on one end, string out of the way, and one Wonder Clip on the other end, just like that. And I throw it over into my big bin of Wonder Clips. So it's always there kind of by my pressing area. And it was really inexpensive. I don't think I paid even $8 for the whole package of Teflon sheets. They weren't very expensive on Amazon, obviously. That's where I order everything from these days because that's my life. So I have that over there along with so that's my hoop for my embroidery machine. That's my hoop screwdriver to undo my hoops. My precision piecing pen, all of that sits right over there. And it's all in one place. So let me flip the camera back over and we'll get back to this cutting. And okay, got those on. So what I have here, let's see. So you can, yeah, there we go. That's better. So what I do, let me bring this back down. So what I do as I'm cutting is I take, I'm the queen of the Post-its, right? Right now I have these little tag Post-its. I don't know where these came from. I think they were part of something. So I have that and my pen sitting here. And as I cut a size for the first time, I just make a little Post-it to stick on the top of it. I have one in here for these. There's the one for the 1.5. There's the one for the 3.5. Just so I know what size I'm looking at. And eventually I just know when it gets covered up and stuff. But to start with, I do that. So now we'll bring this back over. So I have this piece of fabric here. And what I do is I take the shortest end and I measure it. How big is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so I know it's 8 inches on this end. And then I'm going to measure the width. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 inches long. All right, so, and I'm going to cut to the nearest 1/2 inch. So 8. So 8 would be, I would get 2 3.5 inch blocks out of here because I'm not going to do 4 inch because I want them at the 1/2 inch. So instead of doing a 4 inch block, I'm going to do a 3.5 inch block. And I'll get 2 of them going this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler. Now I'm going to see if I need to give myself, well, I'm just going to give myself a cleanup cut because look, that's a little bit weird there. So I'm going to come in here with my ruler and give myself, see, it's not a lot, it's just basically string at this point, just a little bit of a cleanup cut. Let me flip it back around. Now I'm ready, and I'm going to cut some 3.5 inch strips. 3.5. There we go. Perfect. I'm just going to put it to the side, and I'm just going to keep cutting 3.5 inch strips. Now I had 19. I could probably do 6 3.5 inch strips if I wanted, but I'm going to get 2 3.5 inch blocks from each one of these strips. So I may or I may not want that many of this color. So now I've cut myself 3 of those strips. So I know I'm going to get 6 3.5 inch blocks there. Okay. And I could keep going, but I'm going to look now and recount here. Line this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a little bit, probably 8.25. So I'm going to do a 4.5. And then what do I have left? I have just right at a 4 inch. So I'm going to do another 3.5. So all I've wasted so far is that. I'm going to set that aside. So I have 3.5 inches. So this needs a little bit of a cleanup cut on this edge. It needs a little cleanup cut on both edges. So what I do at this point on my strips is I look and see, you know, is one edge good and ready to be cut, or do they both need cleanup cuts? What's the deal? If they both need cleanup cuts, I only cut one edge because I'm going to cut across. And whatever's left here on the end is going to be waste. So I don't worry about doing them both. And so now I'm going to go here and do 3.5. And another 3.5, because I know I'm going to get 2 3.5 2 3.5 inch squares. So there's those. And I'm going to put those in my 3.5 inch. So far that's my waist. Now this is my 4.5 inch, and I've got an edge that looks, yeah, this edge looks good to go. So we're going to do a 4.5 inch block. Now, what do I have left? I have just about a 3.5. But it needs a cleanup cut on both sides. So let's clean this up. Actually, this side looks okay. I can come right in here. And I can cut right there. So I just have that much waste. And then I can flip it to the horizontal, right? And I can come in here and go, oh, there we go, 3.5. And that can go. And now I've got these 3 that are all the same size because these are the first 3 I cut off of my piece of fabric for this particular piece. And I'm piling them all up, making sure they're pretty nice and even. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut my 2 3.5 inch squares. And I'm going to get 3 from that cut. To go on the 3.5. And then I'm going to do another 3.5. Okay, now from all of that fabric, this is what is left for scrap. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. And this doesn't have to be waste. If you're someone who saves these kind of scraps to put into dog beds or kitty beds and stuff like that, perfect. They go in there. If you do the kind of quilting where you just kind of lace stuff out, you know, all different fabrics and all. Let me show you a piece, what I'm talking about. It's called collage quilting. So that's what this is. It's a piece of collage sewing. Now I did this on my embroidery machine, but you can do it on your sewing machine as well. And so in this, I just needed a bunch of tiny, all of these are tiny little pieces of fabric. They're just little scraps. So that's what I used from my bins. I go and I got out a bunch of my little 1.5 and 2.5 and 3-inch squares and that kind of odd shapes, and just use them for cutting this out. Don't worry, I'm going to do a video on this. It's coming. And so you need small pieces like this for collage sewing. So those pieces right there, no, I would not put them in a regular quilt, but you bet your money I'm going to save them because I can use them in collage quilting. So now here's the other part of that. I had these little 1.5-inch squares. I rarely do mini quilts because it's hard on my eyes, but I have friends that do, and I have friends that are always looking for 1.5-inch squares. So I've got this whole pile of 1.5-inch squares. So I save these. I go ahead and cut them and I save them. And then a couple times a year, I'm part of a group here in my local area. We get together and have a stash swap. You bring in your piles of squares, fat quarters that you know you don't want or aren't going to use, and we kind of do it like a little auction kind of. I'll hold up, well, this bag is way too big for 1.5, but let's say I had a bunch of this kind of stuff in here, right? And I would say, for this bag, I'm looking for a minimum of 2 fat quarters, whatever. Or I might say, I'm looking for 1 charm pack. Those are your 5-inch squares, right? Your 5-inch squares. And then somebody would say, I'll give you a charm pack. And then somebody else would go, I'll give you a charm pack and a fat quarter. And so we kind of do an auction, and it's fun. We bring snacks. Now, honestly, in the last 1.5 years, we haven't done it because of COVID. But I'm thinking that we're probably going to do it. We've been talking about doing one through Zoom. So we would have to bring our own snacks, but nonetheless, it'll be fun. You sit around and you swap, and then at the end of the night, you exchange what you swapped. There's one person who writes everything down, so everybody gets what they've swapped. And you go home with new fabric. Isn't that great? And you not spend any more money. So my 1.5 inches, I always take with me to my stash swaps because people always want them that do mini quilts. And I say, you are welcome to have them. And by the end of the night, if nobody's like taking them in a swap, I give them to a good friend who I know uses them. And then these, so now I'm asking them, please bring your small scraps for me because I do collage quilting. So that's what I use those for. So as you can see, technically, that was my waste out of that whole piece, because even though this could be considered waste, I found a way to use it. So I put those over there too. These pieces, I literally put them in a gallon-sized zippy bag, and I leave a little bit of the zippy bag open so air gets into the fabric, but they're just all in there, all these little scrappy kinds. Like if I have little triangles and stuff, all of that stuff goes in that bag for when I do that. So out of that whole piece, that's all that's going in the bin. Not too bad, huh? Not shabby. And so let me go into this piece. We'll find something that is a different size, so you can kind of see, because that was, okay, now this piece, I don't even know where this piece came from. It has been sewn at one point. There are stitch marks here where this has been ripped out. I might have gotten this at a swap, I don't know. So what I do, let me flip the camera over to here. There's my pressing area. There we go. So I'm going to take and I'm just going to kind of trim off and pull off any loose threads. Just, get up a little bit now. So, oh, look what's happened here. So there's a hole here. So whoever ripped out whatever was there, it looks to me from this shape that this was somebody's quilt label that they stitched onto this fabric and then they ripped it off. That's what I think it is. So now I know there's a hole here, so I'm going to end up getting, I know, a cut here. So let's just go ahead and give it a little spray and press it out. Get it nice and flat. And that'll be nice for this piece too, because this piece has been abused a little bit by being pre-sewn. And there's even a little bit of thread in here on a few of these spots still. So I'm going to trim this. Now, I always spray and press from the back. And I'll tell you why. Is because even though this says on here, they call this now a restorative formula. Interesting. Yeah, it kind of restores it. That's true. It doesn't say it on here anymore. At least I can't say it. But all of these kind of sizings, one of the reasons I like them is because they're flake free. They don't, when you use starch, you end up getting flakes, and you end up getting flakes on the bottom of your irons. And I don't like that. This is flake free. And even though it says flake free, if I get a little heavy handed with it when I'm spraying, which, sometimes Dave will come in or something, and I'm sitting here spraying, and I just keep spraying while he's talking to me. When you iron it, you're going to get flakage. And that's why I don't get my fabric super wet and then press it, let it dry and then press it, because you will always, no matter what it says, you will always get some flakage. And that's why I always press from the back, because if there is a little flakage, I can just fluff it off and it won't mar or change anything on the front of the fabric. So hopefully that will help if you've had that problem. So let's bring the camera back over to here. And we're gonna, whoa, go back here, sorry. All right, so now we've got this little piece. Hardly worth anything, right? No, you know now that we're gonna get quite a bit out of here. So let's do some measuring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not quite a full 7, because that's obviously gonna have, so I'm gonna say this is gonna be 6.5 at the best. I'm going to count across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a little bit. All right. So 6.5. Let's go ahead and trim up, square up the edges a little bit. So there it is. 6.5. And there's a reason I'm cutting it at the half, is because that extra half might give me just what I need to make those little 1.5-inch cuts. All right, so that so far is my waist, and this really doesn't need a clean up cut here, so we'll start on this side. So I know I have 6.5 inches this way. So 3.5 and 3.5 is 7, so I can't do 3.5s on here, but I could do 2.5s, right? So we're going to cut some 2.5-inch strips. And the reason I put in a new blade when I start this is because if you settle in for a long winter's night of cutting, you're probably going to need to change your blade at the end before you go back to cutting yardage and stuff for your fabric. So now this gives me a 2.5. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to get 3 2.5-inch strips out of here. That can go. That is even a little small for my collage quilting, so I won't save that. So I ended up with 3 2.5-inch strips, and I'm going to stack those. Now, I don't stack over 3 or 4 at the most. I know sometimes your things do more. I don't, because if it slides or whatever, then you ruin a whole bunch at once, right? So I'm gonna come in here at 2.5, and we're gonna cut there. That goes in my 2.5 inch pile. We're gonna do another 2.5. Okay. So I got 6 2.5 inch blocks. Cool. Now, what do I have here left? Looks like I have just a little bit over 1.5 inches. So look at there. I'm on 1.5 inches there. Cut that down. That's waste. Now we're going to turn it to the side and we're going to cut 1.5. So I got 3 1.5 inch, 3 1.5 inch squares. So that goes on my 1.5 inch square pile. Now, what I have here. Now, this could be scrap. Is it too small for my collage quilting? So I bring over my piece. Well, it could have been that piece. Could have been that piece. So you use some pretty small pieces in your collage quilting. So it is not too small. So those 3 are going in my collage quilting bag. And that was my waste. And that could go in a bag to go in doggy beds and pet beds. So I have a friend who does that. So I saved mine for her. So that's going to go in hers. So technically from that square, that's all the waste I have. So that's how I do all of my cutting to go into my trays. So let me grab a new tray. Now, you can, if you want, oh, isn't this one pretty? Aqua? I don't know where this one came from. I've had it forever. That's the only one like it I have. So I like using it because it's my favorite color. One of my favorite colors. So I'm going to take my 5.5 inch blocks. I only got a few out of what I cut so far, but that's okay. Just going to put those together nice and neatly, and I'm going to put them in my bin or in my tray. Now, you can, if you want to, you can divide these out into colors. So I would just call that like a red pile. I would call those a neutral. Oh gosh. I might even put those in a red pile. There's a lot of red in them. These are definitely grays and neutrals. Those are neutrals. Oh, I must have had a red Moda Grunge. So I got one square there. That's cool. Oh, I got some more down here. All right, so those are neutrals. So that's all I got out of that was kind of a red pile and a neutral pile. If you do that, you might want to have a tray for every color that you do, because you could end up with your 4.5s and your 3.5. So let's just set that aside for a second. So here's, I've got 4.5, I've got a 3.5, I've got 1.5, and I have 2.5. So those could, all those sizes could go in one tray called reds, right? That would make sense. I don't do mine that way, because I'll just pull a stack when I'm doing them and go, oh, there's a color I like, and I'll pull it out. I don't, for me, I don't have time to sit and put them all into pretty little colored piles. I wish I did. It would be really nice, but I don't, so I don't worry about it. I stopped worrying about things I cannot figure out. So there's my pile of 4.5s. I'm going to put those in there. I'll do my 3.5s. I do try to kind of neaten them up a little bit. I don't want y'all thinking I'm like a total slob or something, because, you know, I try not to be that way. Ooh, now that's another discussion I should have with you all real quick. let's see, where did it go? Here it is. I pulled this. This was a piece that was in that bag. And it's like a full fat quarter. Now, I could fold it up and put it in my fat quarter bin, right? I could do that. But this is one of those fabrics. Like that is one of those fabrics as well. Even that is, but in a brighter color, that we like to call reads as a solid. It's a print, obviously, but if I don't use a lot of full-on solids, but I like the idea of solids, so I would use this in place of a solid. So you all know, now something may go clunk here if that falls over. You all know that I have this big bin of all of my whites and neutrals. Yes, even this is in my whites because it reads as a white solid from far away. So what I've started doing with fabrics like this is I started putting them in their own bin. That is my reads as solid, but not white. So I have another bin over here and I started putting, so that's where this went, into the reads as solid, but not white. This would go into the white cream neutral reads as solid bin. But if I had a big enough piece of that, that might just go into my fat quarters, but I could put it into reads as solid. But let's go back to looking at these for a second. That would go into reads as solid. I ended up with some really cool things. I didn't realize I had these. Look at all of these little like engineering drawings and stuff on here. And that's just a teeny, that definitely reads as a solid. That would definitely, if I had a big piece, it would go into that reads as solid bin. That way, when I know I need something that reads as a solid, I can grab that bin and rifle through it and see what I've got. So here's my 3.5 inch blocks. I've got a lot of those in there. Oh, now that's pretty. This was a really pretty fabric. I like that. And I put them in here, and then I put the 2.5s and the 1s. And then when this gets up to the top, I stop cutting, right? And I cut when I'm done with a piece of fabric. When I've used it for a project, let me see if I can find something in here that might make sense like that. That's part of a charm pack. Trying to find something that'll make sense to what I'm saying. Okay, this might kind of make sense. All right, so this was obviously part of a layer cake, 10-inch layer cake. Right? So when I cut whatever it was here, I don't remember when I did this. I did it with this fabric. Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I do. I did a faux cathedral window with this. I'm obviously done. Now, if you're somebody who says, no scraps for me, buddy, I'm out of there, then you would put that in your little bin. Okay, your little trash bin. That's cool. But I know just by looking at this that I am going to get a whole strip of 2.5-inch squares here. In fact, while I've got it here, this side didn't need to be pressed very much. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So now I have a whole stack that I can cut into 2.5-inch strips. And this I want to fix up a little bit. And what can I get out of? Oh, looks, I can get 2.5 inches out of here too. All right, so I'm going to cut. So now I can cut all of these into 2.5-inch squares. And they're not all the same fabrics either, different ones. So when I'm done with that, as I'm working on the project that this fabric went with, I would just stand here and cut it and put it in my bins. And that's the scrap on that. Not bad. I'm going to flip my camera back over. You're going to see a smudgy one. Now you're going to see me. So as I'm cutting or working on a project, I'll cut and put in the bins. I don't do big cuts like this unless like life is out of control the way it is now. And sometimes I have to be in my sewing studio and I might not have the brain power to do any sewing or designing, but I can stand and cut. And it's still, this might sound goofy, I know, but it still brings me joy just to know that I'm here with my fabric. I know, guys, I'm a little nuts. I'm literally crazy right now. So like I have 2 boxes, not boxes, big bits. I have 2 of these full of stuff. Now, like these are all 5.5-inch squares that I just need to put in bins, right? So no problem. Because I love pre-cuts. Oh gosh, I use them all the time. But here is a stray 10-inch square. So I know from one 10-inch square, I can get 2 of these lovely little things that I'm crazy about now. So that's going to basically get cut in half and put in there. So, you know, whenever you have stray charm squares, stray layer cake squares, go ahead and decide what you're going to do with them. Cut them down and put them in, oops, sorry. And put them in your scrap bins. And that way, one day, if you go, you know what, I just want to sew scraps together. I want to sew. I want to make a completely scrappy quilt. I've told you this before. There's nothing I love more than a quilt that is just completely scrappy because it tells such a cool story. It's like, that's from so-and-so's birthday quilt. That's from so-and-so's new baby quilt. That's from so-and-so's wedding quilt. Oh, that's a quilt that I made because I love this design that it was all done. It's like this. That's from a faux cathedral window quilt that I did about like 6 years ago. So it's just all there ready to be sewn together. And if all you do is sew squares together or rectangles together or jelly roll strips together, you're going to have a beautiful quilt and it's going to have a lot of meaning in it and you're going to love it. And those are the kind of quilts you throw on the back of the sofa. And if you guys have movie night on Friday night at home or Saturday and whatever, you make the popcorn up, you and the kids and the dog and cat and the husband and whoever, the wife, whatever, you get under it, you eat your popcorn, you watch your scary movie or your romantic movie with your girlfriends, whatever, and you have a great time. And you can get that quilt dirty and pop it in the wash, no big deal. And everybody has a good time. And that quilt starts to gather all of the history and the love and the meaning. Because that's why I quilt. It's history, it's family, it's love, friendship. That's why I quilt. That's why my grandma was, I think, glad to teach me, is because that's what I wanted to get out of quilting. What do you get out of quilting? Drop me a comment here and let me know. Why do you quilt? I'd love to know. If you have bins or things that you do with your scraps, drop me a comment. I'd love to know. Share, because this might not be somebody's cup of tea. Your way of doing it might be. You never know. Let's share and find out. You can always drop pictures and stuff over at Sew in Common on Facebook. Sew in Common, the group on Facebook page. Love to see them. Thanks everybody for hanging on with me. I know this has been crazy the last few weeks, and I'm afraid it's going to be for a few more weeks, like I said, until the end of October. I am wanting for next week's Sew in Common video to get back to showing you I've got it cut out and ready to go, my next socialites block. And I really want to get it done because I'd like to get that quilt done by Christmas. I have never been a person to gather UFOs. I have them now. COVID has put me into a place of having UFOs. I've never been more busy in my life. Have you guys been busy? Crazy. Anyway, thanks for spending some time with me as always, everybody. And go sew life beautiful. Bye now.